I want to talk to you about a journey that began back in February 2022, a journey that nobody planned, one that involved millions of people fleeing their homes, their families, leaving their husbands behind, their jobs, and moving to foreign countries. But a journey at the same time that involved a group of friends from small communities around Peterborough, around Stamford, around Dronfield, who made the journey the other way, who were drawn to support their friends and help their friends in the time of need, and drove across a continent to bring them moral support, supplies and aid. It's a journey that continued throughout an 18-month period, trip after trip, and our friendships grew and widened. It's a journey that is bound by friendship and the ties that brings. Friendship that originated back in 2012 when we came together through football, continued through the dark times of 2014 and through to the present day. And it's a journey that is based on an absolute conviction that the cause we are all fighting for is right and will prevail. Let me take you on that journey. You know, I'm regularly sending messages to people in Ukraine, even if we're not helping them at the moment. I'll just send them a message saying, we haven't forgotten about you, our current priority is X.
I'm from Ukraine, Kharkiv, and 1 year and a half we faced the terrible catastrophe.
You know, on the radio, they were telling us every 15 minutes that the war has started.
There's lots of the refugee women in Poland with their children, so that's quite poignant because they're meant for back in country. And to so be part of that was more difficult because it really brought it home, and you know.
There's something about this crisis, perhaps about the sheer evil of Russia did, and the fact that it is very black and white.
We were aware of the risk of the war, but you don't believe till the very, very last moment.
What matters most is that they know that we're still going to keep supporting them as this continues, because it's not going to end soon, and they want to know that we're there for them.
Everybody was shocked by the invasion of Ukraine. We were all horrified by it. We all thought, you know, how can this be happening?
What we first thought was, we've got room in our house, we could have someone here, but that took a while for the government to organise and a while for us to organise.
When the invasion started, Richard sent out a message, I think it was a quick email, just inviting anybody that was interested and wanted to get involved to come and join him down at the pub the next evening. And because he's a friend, we felt it was the right thing to do, to go and find out. We had no preconceived ideas of what was going to happen.
Richard came to me and said, could we utilise the Tribune to get the message out, to try and raise funds, which was initially for medical equipment.
So knowing that this project was running local to our headquarters, actually it was a great opportunity for us to be able to do something, however small, to help.
We didn't know what to do. We were trying to get some supplies. We heard some bombs and some loud noises, and we knew that lots of our friends left the city and went away. And during the afternoon hours, we were already so much frightened, so we had to go and find the bomb shelter, which was not in our district next to our apartment. We had to run to the shelter in our school facility where I worked and stay there in the shelter for the night. The shelters were not prepared. I want to say that they were just sheds underneath the building.
Without lights and water.
Without lights,
Without
very,
no water.
very
no
dirty,
lights, yeah.
polluted.
Yeah, well, we met at school. We were at a junior school in a suburb of Sheffield called Bradway, and I was with Richard through school from being, I think, 7, right the way through to when I left the school at 16, and then we remained friends
ever since.
Well, so Tony is my oldest and best friend, and we met at primary school when we were 7 in Sheffield, and we've stayed in touch ever since. We've spent a lot of time in pubs, we've spent a lot of time watching football.
It's true for both Rich and Les and for me and Tony that we've always had marriages where we travel independently. So I hope, I'm speaking for Les as well, but I hope that she would say too that we had no problem with them going, particularly off to Ukraine and Poland. It was part of a series of trips that they'd done. Neither of us wanted to spend that much holiday going to watch football, and we were happy to let them go. And there've been times where we've been out as a family as well, so they've gone out for a little while and then we've gone out for a couple of weeks in France and been to games too. But I don't particularly want to spend a month following football.
My connection with the sort of Ukraine, Soviet Union goes back to 1990 when I went out to work in the embassy in Moscow, and I was there for 4 years, and I think I probably made about 4 or 5 trips to Ukraine at that stage, and then had no real connection with that part of the world until 2012 when my friend Tony and I went out to watch England in the Euros. The Euros were in Poland and Ukraine that year, and we decided to go to Ukraine.
My sister was living in Krakow. We were looking for accommodation in Donetsk to go and watch some football when the Euros were on, and we had tickets for games in Donetsk, and so we needed somewhere to stay. We tried different routes. There were some fan-based accommodation, but they didn't look great. My sister asked one of her friends, who's Ukrainian, who just happened to have a friend who lived in Donetsk, and that was Galia. And so through my sister, we were in contact with Galia and arranged to go and stay at their place during the tournament.
It was one of those occasions where as an Englishman you're not terribly happy about this when the person says, oh, you can come and stay with us, and I don't know about you, I often find that's a little bit disquieting. Never met the person before but they want you to go and stay. Anyway, long and short of it is that we went to Donetsk, we met with Galia and her husband Igor, we stayed with them and we had a wonderful time. Beautiful city, great football, lovely people, and we made firm friends with them and stayed in touch with them from 2012 onwards.
To be honest, it was in some ways reassuring that we'd got a place to go where we knew people, or we'd got some contact with them. We initially set off to stay in Kharkiv, where we knew no one, and then travelled down to Donetsk, and to meet Galia initially, and then Igor after he finished work. And they were such great hosts. They took us out for meals, showed us the best places to go. But also they were working, so it was they were sort of fitting us in around their job. They had a young daughter at that stage, Vlada, and I think Vlada went to go and stay with her grandparents while we stayed in her bedroom. So it was very, very generous of them.
In 2014, very sadly, they were forced to leave Donetsk, and when the Russians provoked an insurrection there, and they fled to Poland and then back to Kiev.
Well, to be honest, I think although we knew that they'd become refugees, I don't think it wasn't something in the UK that was particularly highlighted. I mean, we were in contact with them, and they explained their situation to us, and they were clearly safe where they were. But the actual that displacement, we realised that a war was happening of sorts, but it wasn't something that was in the press in the same way as this has happened on this occasion.
Our families are very close as well and get on together. And when the war started, I just rang Tony straight away and said, we've got to help. And he said, of course we have.
Well, I think he'd been in touch with Igor anyway, sort of when we didn't think the war was going to happen, but before that. So I knew he was keen to do something if he could. And when Igor did get back to him, when the war actually started, basically saying, actually, I need these medical items, can you help me get them? And Tony was the obvious person he was going to contact, really. Despite the fact that we obviously don't live in Sheffield, they're so close. And obviously with the footballing trips that they've done and that Tony had met Igor, then it was the obvious thing.
In my institute where I work, we were prepared in case the war starts. We were obliged to come to work. Because we are in the hospital that will start to receive patients and wounded victims of war immediately, especially with our specialty. So I went to work And we got together with all our staff, and we decided that we have to stay in the hospital, perform restructurization in order to be ready to receive big amounts of victims any time of the day or night. And we had to stay in the hospital without leaving it. And so we did for about a week. Of course, all of us were thinking about families, and the danger was growing because Russians were approaching, and they were from actually 3 sides of Kiev already, and major transport arteries to the east and to the west, and of course to the north, were already cut. And the most difficult decision was when is the proper moment to evacuate the family. Because for me, it was absolutely evident that I will stay and I will do anything to protect Kiev, to protect Ukraine. I will not emigrate, no way.
And I had a daughter who was 2 years old at that time, and son who was 5 years old. And it was like a nightmare, and like something that no one could comprehend. So we thought it would be nice, because we know the place, at least it's the school building where I worked, so we knew where to find a kettle to boil some water. There were no sirens, no alarms, nothing like that. It was just airplanes flying with the roar and noises. We did not really understand what was going on, so we decided, so we stayed there for the night. Then they started bombing furiously, and we stayed there for 7 days, afraid to leave the shelter, afraid to go to get some supplies. And then somehow my husband and my mom got to the apartment building, and under the attacks, those minutes were like not minutes, like there were a couple of hours during the day when they went to get the things. They took just what they saw, and they stuffed the whole car. And then when they brought it to school, like all those personal things, like sweaters, different like pillows, blankets, we just did not understand what we really need. Like my colleague called from the Dnieper. She went there one day earlier, and she told, "Don't stay in Kharkiv anymore. Just turn. Let's go away. Try to leave Kharkiv." And whenever it turned 6 o'clock in the morning, we started into the car. It was very, we were very scared.
I left with my family the very first minutes of starting, because my district is at the edge of the city, and I saw it early. First I heard it very early in the morning, even at night. Yes, it was 5, but it is February, and it was very dark, and we were sleeping, and it was very, very loud, and we saw it from our windows, and we just picked our kids. I picked my parents, my grandparent who is 90, and grabbed them and rode to the, it's not far from Kharkiv, to a village, to our friends, just to see what was going on. And I left my cat because we were not leaving for stay away for so long. The road took usually we ride to our friends home for 40 minutes. It is not too far from Kharkiv, but that day we rode for 10 hours.
I think it was just, what can we do to help? and Richard, with his quick thinking and his proactivity, you know, gave us a really easy route to help. I mean, his mum's still in Sheffield and she's done a lot to help as well. His sister and brother-in-law are still here too. So there are a few of us and other friends in the area too. But no one that we've spoken to has said, "Oh no, we're not interested." I think people are glad to be given a way to help out, you know, and I think that's what we did with Richard, and now we're providing that same thing for other people at work, at my work, people at my exercise classes. You know, when we've had a little collection in all the places we could think of, and then those things together make a van load. You know, that's the way it's gone.
It's interesting actually because we call the project Helping Our Ukrainian Friends because we're working with people we know in Poland and Ukraine, and that keeps expanding, but they're still our friends, they're people we know. We don't work with people if we don't know them, if we haven't got a relationship. And it's true on the other side here in the UK. It's essentially a group of friends. So my friends in Helpston were the people I first invited to join me in the Bluebell pub to talk about how can we help, how can we make a difference. But I also invited my close friends in Sheffield, and my family in Sheffield and friends in South Yorkshire, which is where I grew up. And they're all part of the team too, which makes it a bit complicated when we want to meet, because we do really have to meet on Zoom because not everybody can get to the pub for a meeting. But essentially, it's a group of friends. And I guess the connection, to be honest, is through me. So helping our Ukrainian friends by a team of friends in the UK, and hence the sort of the South Yorkshire connection too. And they do a load of work up there and raise a lot of money too.
It was just immediately obvious that his passion came across for the need to do something, and overwhelmingly around the table, and because there was a dozen of us in the pub at that point, just all agreed that actually we should try and do something. But we wanted it to be personal, and therefore the people that Richard knew directly from his previous football trip out to Ukraine, so Galia and Igor, gave it that personal touch which actually pulled us all in. I think it wasn't just like contributing to a major initiative, you know, like the disaster fund that you see a lot on the telly. This was about something that some people could do to support those in Ukraine or just outside of Ukraine
It was because Richard knew Galia and Igor. He'd got in touch with them and said, "What can we do? You know, I want to help." From his point of view, he said, "I want to help. I want to do something. What can I do?" And so they said, "Well, we'll need medical supplies. We'll need things for the hospital. We don't really know what's going on, but we'll definitely need those."
The Russians' attacks were so dense that they managed to destroy some of our electricity stations and facilities, and even such a protected facility like our institute ran into blackout, and we are the last that comes into blackout.
Yeah.
But even electricity was cut for us also. And we had to perform the operations, 3 of them that were going on in that moment. One of them was a child on backup generators and accumulators of the equipment. And we managed to do that. And every patient survived. Everything went real well. But definitely, I would prefer not ever have such an experience.
Yeah, of course.
To nobody.
He has a very good friend over in Ukraine, and obviously as soon as everything started off, Richard, this doctor reached out to Richard, and very quickly it became obvious that we could help by getting supplies across there. I've known Richard for many years. In fact, the two of us were families who, going back 15, 20 years, used to host children from Chernobyl, from Belarus. It was a regular thing that was organised by a wonderful lady in the village. So we got to know each other quite well on various trips that we organised with these children, and I've been good friends with Richard ever since.
Well, Richard, he sort of comes to the granary and the shop regular, and we'd seen it on TV as well, the devastation out in Ukraine, and we got talking while he was in the granary having a coffee with his friends, and he said we're going to sort of start collecting, and could we use the granary and Willowbrook farm shop as a collecting point, and that's how it all started.
The most immediate things was, and Richard set it up straight away, was a Just Giving page, and it was amazing the speed that money came in.
Well, Compare the Market and Athene Communications, which is Richard's company, have worked together quite a bit on and off throughout the years. And so obviously when Richard started working on helping our Ukrainian friends, he got in touch and said, look, this is what I'm doing. I think without exception, all of our colleagues really wanted to do something at a time when actually there's very little you can do. So being able to support Richard and get involved was really important, not just to me, but to everybody here really. And we had really great engagement and loads of people got involved.
So, I think we had a very modest target to start with, 20,000 or something like that. May even been less than that, but to achieve that within days and weeks was just incredible. It just felt like everybody felt it was important to do something.
It's been a long time since there was any war, invasion type war in Europe, and I think everyone just wanted to do something, because I think everyone nationally just felt this is terrible. You can't just walk in and do this, but they did.
But the family doesn't have to be under this risk. Yeah. So actually, when most of our friends already moved their families out, we decided that we have to go to Poland to settle the family there. It was already second time for us after Donetsk. We had this experience, and there we also waited until the very moment when it became evident that this is not the place where the family can survive without risk.
Within a few days, stuff started rolling in, and it just got bigger and bigger, and individuals were bringing larger and larger amounts every time they came. And it was quite overwhelming how public in the UK was supporting getting stuff out to the Ukraine. We've got a container. The partner Joe in the granary, that was the main collecting point where people could bring their goods to, and they brought it in there, and then we'd sort of transfer it to the store, and ready for Richard to collect and his friends, when they did a trip out there.
We come back from Ukraine. This is the best driver.
Yeah, it's the junior driver. I'm concentrating on the road because it's snowing. But other than that, it's perfect.
It's snowing, raining, and slippery.
I think we were trying to find a way where we could take something that would provide some relief and some hope for children, both living as refugees in Poland and also in Ukraine, in the places where we could spread those boxes to. And essentially we contacted the local school.
Richard was very passionate, and so was Tony, so they drove out multiple times through the summer. And at that point we were very much the backroom staff, so we would sort out all the boxes and make sure everything was packed, and we're down there packing the lorry ready for them to go, and that was backbreaking work, but it really was important to do that. But it was only through the autumn that I felt we sort of stepped up, if that's appropriate, So I'm involved with the local school, and we knew Christmas was coming, and we thought, wouldn't this be great if we could align another trip out with relief aid with some Christmas gift boxes. And so where were we going to get them from? Local school. And so with my contacts, I got in touch with the school, and they were really passionate for helping in doing that and so on. And then it sort of felt at that point that I wanted to be part of the crew that took those to Gliwice in the end of November.
Because we have a Ukrainian child staying with us as part of the Homes for Ukraine scheme, we'd got a route into the school and approached the head teacher with a view to seeing if the children there could construct some boxes which we could then take out as Christmas gifts for the children in Poland and Ukraine.
And the overwhelming response, not just from the local school, but multiple schools, is that we ended up taking 3 vans at the end of November. And these are big, equivalent of a Ford Transit van, fully laden with food and stuff, but also boxes with the gifts and so on.
The thing that really kind of made me most anxious, until I'd done it about 5 or 6 times, was getting through customs. Because of Brexit, we do now, even though we're delivering humanitarian aid, we still have to make a customs declaration in Calais. And actually the declaration is very simple. It's a letter saying, I am exempt from customs because I'm delivering humanitarian aid. So what could be simpler? But behind that, you have to have an inventory of everything you're taking. But the real problem is not that, but it's the fact that the French customs officers have never seen one of these letters before. So you turn up and you say, hey, I'm delivering humanitarian aid, and you present them with the form, and they say, oh, no. You need your customs form XYZ, and you need this number, and you need that number. No, I don't need that. Yes, you do.
I spoke to my brother, Dale, who's a fellow director at Princebuild. Do you want to do something? Do you fancy taking some vans out and just doing our bit? I don't really know what I'm going to do, but I've got a contact. Maybe we could do something. And he was well up for that. So, and that's where it started, really. I spoke to Liz. She gave me the contact details for Richard Astle, and it went from there, really.
Eventually, somebody turns up after about sort of 40 minutes and says, oh, no, he doesn't need any of that. He's got an exemption. And I go, know that. And it's all very amicable and it's fine. What we've found in the last few trips is I think the French have become more and more accustomed to the system, and they're letting you through. But there's marvellous moments on each trip, because when you're on the ferry, we have to go as truckers, because we're technically taking commercial goods, even though it's donated and it's for charitable purposes. So there's 2 great things about that. One, you get to go in the trucker's lounge and eat a trucker's meal, which is fab. But the other thing, which actually is less great, is that you can watch the customs screen in the lounge, and it comes up and you are either green, which is straight through, or amber, which is stop at customs. I don't know what red is, I've not seen a red, but an amber, stop at customs. And I watch this every time, and my emotions are so intense. If we get a green, I'm punching the air, we're through. If you get an amber, your heart just sinks and you go, okay, here we go, customs again. So yeah, there's quite a lot in it, and obviously you've got to coordinate at the other end as well and make sure that the Polish team are ready for us, that we've got accommodation, we know what we're doing, and again, we're looking after them, we're thanking them, because a lot of those are refugees, they've got a lot on their minds as well. So quite a lot to think about, yeah.
And then you arrive in Gliwice and you start unloading it, and all the people there to help, and it was just fantastic, that part.
We spent all the next day unloading, loading, because we had to come out of our vans into vans that could go over into Ukraine.
Lots of generators as well,
yeah.
You know, and that was, they were heavy.
And then we gave out all the
gifts
boxes,
and so on, yeah.
Christmas boxes then. Well, the ones that were going to the Ukrainian children that were there, and then obviously a lot of them were going on the other transport into Ukraine to the schools and children in
Richard
Ukraine.
Went with that into Ukraine, whereas the rest of us drove home.
Я вітаю вас від імені жителів села Гоптівка. Щиро дякую всім, хто долучився до допомоги нашим жителям у цей важкий воєнний час. Ми дякуємо жителям Англії, ми дякуємо жителям Польщі за те, що не забувають про українців, присилають нам таку необхідну допомогу. І фонарики від вас, і свічки. Все, що ви даєте, все йде тільки на благо наших людей. Во ім'я Господа, спасибі вам за порятунок, за такі прекрасні подарунки в важкий час. Дякую всіх, молюся за всіх від імені нашого села.
We left Willowbrook Farm here at about lunchtime on the Wednesday, and we drove straight to Dover. We got on the ferry, obviously to Calais, and we drove from Calais to a place called Altaires, I think that's the right pronunciation, in Belgium. We stopped there overnight. We got there at midnight. Yeah, just at midnight. Unfortunately, the pub was shut, which was a bad one, but we got there at midnight, got early start. We drove to Brussels to pick up some football kit that was donated by a football team for the refugees. So we picked that up, and then we drove from there to Meissen in Germany, and we stayed there overnight. That would have been Thursday night. And then we left Meissen Friday morning and drove to Gliwice, our final destination. That's it, and then obviously we stayed there for all of Friday night, all of Saturday, and we came back on Sunday. Well, my brother and I actually came back a little bit earlier because we had to get back to work, so we actually drove 800 miles on the Sunday to get back into we were just outside Calais, Poland's Calais, so it was a good drive. And the vans were, unfortunately the van's brand new, but they're limited at 68 miles an hour. So if you can imagine, on the autobahns, I've got cars whizzing by me at 110, 120 mile an hour, and we're scooting along at 68 miles an hour. So that wasn't fun.
So personally, I've been out 9 times. The last time was in June, so 9 times between March 22 and June 23. And on 2 of those occasions, I've also driven into Ukraine with our Polish colleagues, driving about halfway to Kiev, where we have a church that we work with, who then unload all of our vans, and then they take it across right to the front line. I mean, literally to the front line. You can, in some of the videos they send back, you can hear the artillery in the background. It's very, very sobering to see that.
Richard asks, Galia and Kasia, what is needed now? And that's sort of changed, I think, over the time, because it was March initially in cold weather. And so it was boots and hats and scarves and gloves and coats and duvets, and that was needed then, and then and the medical supplies, and later on
there was camping stoves,
and generators, because they'd started bombing the infrastructure and the lights were off. And they were showing us pictures while we're on camps, that some of the ladies said, and this is where we go when they're bombing, and it was like just an underground dugout with benching down the side, and we're going, oh that's awful, are you safe there? And they go, well, yes. I said, but sometimes we have to stay there for 10 hours with the children. Yeah. And there's nothing there. It's a hole under the ground with 2 benches on. And we're helping a deaf school as well, aren't we?
We are in Odessa. Yeah.
Because part of their issue is when they have to go down into underground dugouts for safety, they can't see, so couldn't see their teachers and helpers and people doing sign language for them.
When we sent, I think we sent generators and battery packs. How important was that for your beneficiaries to have that support from abroad? What were you able to explain to them where it came from and what was happening? And how important was it for them to know that there were communities in Great Britain trying to help them?
The deaf people who asked, because this is kind of like a culture of deaf people, and they always ask questions and they always want to know from where something came. So it was them who asked, okay, Alona. They asked, from where is this? And Alona told from our foreign donors, from our British friends and partners. And their reaction was always, wow, people know about us even there. And don't forget about us and care about us, and they were very grateful.
There I had the chance to go actually in one of these vans. We had a sort of convoy of 4 vans in, I think it was March time or April time, where we drove to Poland. There was Mark from Princebild and his brother and various guys from around here. We took 4 vans over, so I was driving one of their vans for the first time. Never driven a van like a commercial van before, so that was quite exciting and scary. So that was really quite an adventure. And then we met the Ukrainian people in country in Gliwice, so that was great.
I think, to be honest, the more time you go out, then that excitement, I wouldn't say it goes, but the scale of it changes a little bit. I think I could see how excited the people who went out on the last Easter trip was with Mark and all the Princebild vans. They were really, pumped because they could, they felt like properly they were. But when you've done it 5 or 6 times, you're still excited. You still know what you're doing, but it's a bit more routine, if you like. I suppose you've experienced that initial high. It's brilliant, but you haven't quite got the same kind of like a dog with 2 tails kind of feeling that those people they were so into it, and it was great to see.
There was lots of lorries and vehicles waiting for us, and lots of helpers. We offloaded all the vans, and quite amazed actually when it was all in a big pile. Oh, you couldn't believe that we actually managed to get that into our vehicles. So we actually took 4 vans out there. There was a hire van as well, so there was 4 vans that we emptied out. Absolutely amazing. And the guys there, the Ukrainian guys that take the stuff in, they were lovely chaps. Just so happy with what we brought. One thing that sticks in my mind is that there was 2 guys there. I can't remember the names. I can't pronounce the names, to be fair. Really nice chaps, and their job was to go over the border, over the Russian lines, if you like, into enemy territory, and try and help the people that were on the Russian side, the families. They hadn't army training or anything. So, but what they were doing, they were helping, but they were getting shot at. And I heard the week before we got there, 2 of their team got shot and injured. So they were desperate to get like flak jackets, bulletproof jackets and helmets, and luckily because we collected so much money, we had the funds to be able to supply them with flak jackets and helmets, and they were so appreciative. In fact, about 2 weeks later we got a photograph from them from the front line wearing the gear that we purchased, so that was really, really heartwarming.
We met a couple of guys, I can't remember the names of these guys, who were giving of their time to take stuff off us in Poland, stick it into their lorries and drive into country. And then one of them was going to be driving across from, relatively safe West Poland over to the eastern borders where it was actually happening.
But you did go into Ukraine several times, Pavel, and I remember you sending us a video when you went all the way across to Sumy with Pastor Alexander. Can you tell us about that trip at all?
My first trip to Ukraine was exactly 1 month after the war has started, but I had gone to a safer region to the western Ukraine. Even though innerly I felt I had a lot of fears about this trip. I was very scared, and I will also tell you about the other trip. So my following trip was all the way to Sumy region, straight to the front lines. I was very scared because I knew that the Russian troops were there, but it was a mix of curiosity and desire to see, where all this help that we were gathering from people from Poland, from people from England. I wanted to see it, how it gets there, how it gets to the final destination.
But can you remember when was the first time you traveled into Ukraine, and what made you want to do that? Why did you, because you're Polish, you have a Ukrainian wife, I believe, but what made you want to give up so much of your time and take so much risk to help the people of Ukraine?
Obviously, we were very troubled by all the events, and we were helping as much as we could all the Ukrainians that were coming to Poland. So we're doing, initially we're doing a lot for them here. But then over some time, we realized that people there, when the war starts, the shelves are empty. People spend time in the shelters, in the basements, hiding from bombings. And those people need help. So the first visit we made, I don't remember exactly, it was either in October or November of last year, and we went to Kryvyi Rog. And then we were also also able to get into Kherson 3 days after it was deoccupied. And we wanted, to see ourselves, because, one thing when the news tells you this is what's happening, but we wanted to see for ourselves what's really going on. And we were so touched and so motivated to continue to help, because it was very, very difficult to see what was happening.
And this guy was going to be literally, risking his life, and he's been doing it since, kind of thing. These are, he just looks like a normal bloke, and he's risking all that. But they were very, very matter of fact, very can-do, just normal fellas. You might see in a pub in Peterborough, kind of thing. They just felt this was the right thing to do. It was very, very impressive.
And when you were there, Pavel, how did they welcome you? I mean, how did they feel about the man from Poland coming all this way to help them?
Jako że Polska jako kraj dość dużo pomogła Ukrainie, to bardzo przyjemnie mnie witali. Po pierwsze, dlatego, że jestem Polakiem.
Because from the day one, Poland was very supportive of Ukraine and Ukrainian people. I was welcomed very, very warmly. People were greeting me. Some people were crying. And people were so much touched by the fact that there are people in other countries who are selflessly willing to come this far to help them out in this difficult situation. It's a very pleasant and very joyful experience for those people living in the front lines, that someone is coming such a long way, making such a long trip to come to continue to support them. Food is important, but even more important is the support, spiritual support, psychological support. It's important for people to know that they're not forgotten. People see that Europe is not forgetting them, that Europe understands that it's not just Ukraine's war, but it's their war as well. And people receive this as a very, very huge help, and they're always greatly thankful, and their thankfulness is many times, if not most of the times, comes with tears in their eyes.
This is a journey that began in 2012. It's a journey that was ignited through friendship and football. In 2012, Tony and I went to watch football in Donetsk, and we had nowhere to stay. And just by pure coincidence, Tony's sister Alison had a friend who knew some people in Donetsk, and those people were Galia and Igor. So we went to Donetsk, we met them, we drank beer, we watched football, we became friends. And 11 years on from then, I had no sense that that friendship would be put through the trials it has been, and that our friends would be forced out of their home twice, and that we would make 10 journeys in 18 months across the continent to help them and their community. And that through the utter evil of the Russian invasion, communities would come together to support each other, to look after each other. It's a journey full of emotion, lots of tears, lots of fatigue, and that's just for the UK team. For our Ukrainian friends, it's unimaginable what they've been through. But it's a journey that continues today. To date, we've raised nearly £180,000. We've delivered nearly 40 tons of humanitarian aid, 1,000 gift boxes for Ukrainian children, 37 generators in the height of the energy crisis last winter. And all of that has been achieved because a community came together and said we must support our friends. Some of those friends we never even knew. and still don't. But they're our friends because it's a country that is standing up against aggression. It's fighting our war on our behalf, a war that is defined by an attack on Western values and which we all have to play our part in ensuring that we, and of course Ukraine, win. And that journey continues. We have big plans for more humanitarian deliveries to help our friends in every way we can, doing what they ask us, supplying them with the things that they need. And of course, therefore, that cause needs money, it needs support, it needs more people, it needs more donations. All I can say is that for me, it's been a roller coaster in 18 months. It's something I never dreamt of doing. I never dreamt of trying to involve my friends in it too. But it's been a defining moment for us all, and I think we are all stronger, one way or another, for being part of the project. Я хочу сказать всем нашим украинским друзьям, мы с вами завжди.
The windows of an office building sparkle as they shatter at the impact of a shell. A child won't take her mother's hand as their transport rounds a bend and her father's left behind. After the last attack, a surgeon leans over a grandmother and does his best to hold off panic as the lights go out. And now, a plumber rushes through a trench, enraged by fear, and fires a burst into an enemy about his age. Seldom does it seem so true that individuals make up the whole, as when a soldier holds her comrade close, as when a friend picks up the phone and asks, "What can we do?"